she has won the right to rest peacefully in Texas waters.
Howdy and hello, I'm Travis Davis, Vice President Ship Operations, Battleship Texas Foundation. Today we're going to talk about all the bits and stuff that are on the deck of the ship. Not just the bits, but the chocks and the fair leads and cleats and all the other deck appurtenances that are on, well, the deck of Battleship Texas. So come on! So on our first stop on the walk-around of these of the ship's bits and stuff that are on the main deck, the appurtenances, as the naval term for it is this guy right here. It's a rolling chock, or a roller chock, I'm sorry. Hence named by these rollers here. These would actually roll here and here and here. And they were installed in 1943 to allow the ship to oil or refuel destroyers at sea, or to take on fuel at sea. Now, Texas really didn't take on fuel at sea from an oiler and an unrep, but what she did do was stationary refuel destroyers at sea. And she did that in 1942 off of North Africa. So, moving on, we have the ship's original bits. That's what these guys right here are called. These are bits. Now, these are hollow on the inside. They're thick, but they're hollow. All the bits on the ship are still the original bits, except for there's two on the stern that are all welded construction. And what these were for was to actually hold mooring line. So the mooring line would come from onshore. There would be a bollard or a cleat or some other appliance onshore where the line would come through the chock right here, wrap around, and either if it was an eye end of the mooring line, which would just loop over and then the line would be tightened on shore, or the line being brought tight here would then be worked around the bit, figure eight style, making the line off to the bit. Now, as we move forward, right here, now it's not on the deck, there is a pocket here for a davit. The davit that was here was to hold the accommodation ladder for the ship's officers. So we're on the bow, and right here was the head of the one of the bow accommodation ladders. This was the officer's quarterdeck. So the ship's officers coming by boat to the ship would come up this accommodation ladder up the side of the ship. There'd be a platform right here that could be stored and put away or rigged out. They would come through right here, and then they're on the ship. Now, the davit I pointed out, there was a line that went down, held a yoke that suspended the bottom part of the ladder. The line for that came up through a block on the top of the davit, and then came back down to this cleat right here. So now you know what that cleat's for. One thing you might say is like, well, what is that for? Well, that is for rigging the awnings that were on the ship. So there was one back here, there's one here. So these stanchions were actually, when the ship was built, were like 8-9 feet tall, and there would be a cable that ran along the top of them to support the awning, and it could be drawn tight here with a shackle and a turnbuckle. So that's what that's for. So one going that way to tension the section this way, and one tensioning the section back this way. And again, we have another chock here. One thing to point out about the chocks is, if you notice, there's one here and there's one here. Well, the line could come through from one chock made off here, and this way it made off here as well. So you could have two chocks, or one bit holding two chocks. That's all they were designed for to do, was to just redirect the line. So redirect this way, redirect that way, or redirect it from shore if you wanted to go to like a deck winch, which is what this guy is right here. This is the ship's original 1914 deck winch. So it has two drums on either side. You have an electric motor right here that drove this thing. And then there is a clutching system, a braking system right here that would brake the motor to slow the motor down while to control the speed of the winch. There's also a clutching system right here to disengage one side of the drum, one side of the winch or other. So right here is that clutch, as you can see here. And then we kind of be just prized into position. These are Wildcats, and they're connected to the Anchor Windlass that is 3 decks below, well technically 4 decks below us, down on the 3rd deck. It's the Anchor Windlass is a steam engine that was connected to each one of these, and these could be clutched in and out of to the engine, so the engine could turn with only one turning or not. So you see there's a nice handbrake here to control the speed of the windlass, or to actually really to lock it in so it doesn't spin through when they're hanging the anchor, or have it at the, as the Navy phrase says, at the bill, hanging, suspended, ready to be dropped. Because largely an anchor would never be dropped unless it was emergency from being stowed in the hawse pipe, and just to be completely released, because it could damage the hull as it fell kind of uncontrolled. Generally, it would be lowered to just above the water and then released, and the anchor chain would spin out. So we have our anchor chain here. Each link is around 95 pounds. And then we have these guys. Well, that's a turnbuckle, but this guy right here, this is a Pelican hook. If you look at it, it looks like the bill of a pelican. So hence the name, Pelican Hook. These are stoppers basically that hold the anchor and prevent it from breaking free and dropping, or pulling through the wildcat and dropping uncontrolled. So for the anchor to be released, each three had to be released from the anchor, and then the anchor lowered before being dropped. So, and usually lowered, and then at least one Pelican hook set again, and then when they were ready to actually drop the anchor, the pin would be pulled, it would be hit with a sledgehammer, the chain would pop the Pelican hook open because it is hinged, and the anchor would run through and drop. Now, our anchors, if you come onto the ship and look, they are Navy stockless anchors. They each weigh 20,000 pounds each, so 10 tons, and they're right here. And having been underneath them from the water, they are even more impressive from down below. So there's a neat little anecdote about Admiral Wiley, who actually was from Texas, and he was the commander-in-chief of the entire U.S. Navy in the late 20s. So he came aboard Texas right after her reconstruction in 1927 as the flagship of the entire United States fleet. So the ship's coming out of Norfolk one evening, on an evening much like this, and he's walking along on the forecastle. And because most of everyone else had gone below, and well, this is kind of sacred space. This is where the officers would come, kind of segregated away from the rest of the crew, to walk around and just kind of relax. He was up here by himself. So he's walking along, no care in the world, enjoying the sunset, and he walks through and falls right into the hawse hole. That's what this is called right here. That is hawse pipe, or the hawse hole. So he walks up and he falls right down, and he gets stopped by the anchor. In his biography, an admiral from Texas, be on the lookout for it if you get a chance, he talks about how he tried yelling and no one could hear him, and he's trying to crawl up the anchor, but he can't. It's really difficult because, well, the anchor was still like wet and muddy from the ship being anchored. So he's trying to crawl up in his whites, and he finally gets up out, and he just tries to play it off like nothing happened at all. So fortunately for him, the access to his stateroom is right off, or his cabin's right off the bow here, and was able to get in. And really the only person that I think that knew of his mishap was his steward's mates. So up here we have two of these kind of fair leads. I'm sorry to say I don't know what the technical term off the top of my head for them is. They're more like fair leads. So these were used with the paravane, which we'll see in a bit. And the paravane was used for, well, mine splitting, and we'll talk about that in a little bit more. So there'd be chains all across the deck to control the paravane, to lower it up and down, and to kind of do those type things. Now these handy little holes right here, these are called the bull nose. So the bull nose is so that the ship can anchor at a buoy, or you could actually run mooring line through them to control the bow of the ship in an anchorage, or I'm sorry, a pier side. So if the ship wanted to anchor at a buoy, you could suspend the anchor from using the Pelican hooks, disconnect the anchor chain, and run it through one of the bull noses, and then tie it off make it fast to the buoy, and the ship could swing at the buoy. And again, we have another rolling chalk here, and another rolling chalk on the other side. Roller chalk. why I'm making that distinction is a rolling chalk is another term for a bilge kill. So those are the fins that are on the curve of the hull, or the bilge radius at the bottom of the ship, to help stabilize the ship as she goes to the water. So some people call them rolling chalks, and others call them bilge kills, and we generally use bilge kills. So this guy right here, if you notice, it's under the hawse pipe, right? When you're like, well, why is there's nothing here, right? Well, that's because Texas was built with 3 anchors. So they're the main 2, and then a third on the port side. And if you look, you can see with the attachments for the Pelican Hook supporting it. Now, the ship only had 2 functional wildcats. There was a dummy wildcat that kind of held the chain, and it gave it a little bit more symmetry up top, but it was not used. It was not active. So that anchor was removed in 1941. Here is where the anchor chain for the 3rd anchor went down below, right here. And the dummy wildcat sat right here. So there had been chain pipe going down through officer's country down into the chain locker, and that 3rd chain bin is still there, and it's empty. There's no chain in it. And of course we see the covers for the chain pipe here, for lack of a better, there would be one right here as well that looked just like that. This is an opening to a trunk that goes to the bottom of the ship. It is one of the deepest trunks on the ship, or shaft, if you will. It goes from here all the way down to the bottom. It's about 70 feet or so, 60 to 70 feet. And then these guys right here, boom, 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 boom. Those are all vent outlets for ventilation, for the ship's ventilation, powered or natural ventilation exhaust or intake. They were blanked in 48, and what would have been on top would have been either a mushroom shaped, so we call them mushroom vents, or just the typical spray-proof ventilation cover, which is, we'll look at some of these in just a minute, because we do actually have a surviving example on the bow. So this is a spray-proof ventilation cover. So the idea is that water sloshing around on the deck, so we're in a seaway, there's water coming up, it hits, it comes up, but it doesn't go up inside and then back down the ventilation trunk, drowning the crew or just making life miserable below. So most of these up here on the bow would have looked like this. So there would have been one right over here. There's one right over here, and right there. Yep. And we have a really nice photo of General Eisenhower and Captain Baker striding right up through here to the bow. This is a fire plug, and it is just basically one of the ship's fire hydrants. So there would have been hose reel up here. Actually, it was right back here on the forward bulkhead of the air castle. The hose would have been made up so you could fight a fire with it. So the handwheel is actually broken off, and but there you can see the cap and the basic outline of it. Everything that we hear from visitors is that even though we have a nice interpretive panel for this that talks about what it is, because our offices are right through that porthole right there, I hear everything from, it's a torpedo, to, it's a bomb. So, no, it's a paravane. And a paravane is just a minesweeping tool. Basic operation, rolled nuts and bolts, very simple, is this thing floated, it would be put over the side, there was a paravane chain that was connected at the bow that connected to the lead on the paravane here, and as the ship moved through the water, the little wing here would make the paravane fly out from the side of the ship. So if you have 2 paravanes attached to the bow, they would do like this. As they move through the water and you're in a minefield, the mines would catch the chain like this, come along the outside, hit the cutter right here, it would cut their cable, the mine would float to the top, and a Marine stationed up high with his rifle try to shoot the horns on a contact mine. So that's the famous mines, that have the little horns sticking off of them. Those are contact mines, and the little points are called horns. So he would try to shoot those and blow it up. The ship streamed paravanes every now and then, but really no mine sweeping to speak of. It was more of a defense than anything. You've looked at everything that's on the bow. All the mooring appurtenances are on the bow. All the little fixtures and features that are on the bow. Of course, we didn't talk about the two big things that are on the bow, and that's the two 14-inch guns, or the two 14-inch gun turrets, rather. We'll talk about those at another date. So, hope you enjoyed this little walk around the bow on a nice evening. And, well, thank you for following us. Thank you for subscribing. If you haven't subscribed, please, please, please subscribe. And if you have subscribed and you like what we do, share with your friends. Please. Particularly friends that, like to watch boring guys drone on and on and on YouTube. If you haven't already followed us on Facebook or Instagram, please do. We appreciate all your support. Thanks again, and y'all have a good one now.